All right, Bryce. So tell me, did you go to any sort of specialized education before going to college? Like, did you go to any sort of special school, like a leadership school or something like that? Or did you just do the traditional public schooling system?
I'm pretty sure it was just traditional, as uppity as they acted in some regards, as far as their, how every once in a while there's in high school that acts as though they can very much prepare you for this specific stage or anything. I don't think it was any of that. It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't officially any of that. It was just a traditional high school. It was a newer one, so it had the reputation of being, the rich kid school because all anytime a
Mm.
new school opens up, at least that's how it worked in Southwest Utah and St. George. The rich people ended up there. I wasn't one of them, but lots of people had really nice cars and stuff, so it made you think it was a pretty cool spot. And it was a nice thing, but long answer, all that. Short answer, just a regular high school.
Okay, great. And how well do you think that prepared you for the next steps of your education?
Um, Not too well in some ways. I think a lot of it was I did have a very natural talent for education in the sense it was easy to learn, and high school helped affirm that. High school is relatively easy, grand scheme. Like you can just show up to class, maybe you do a little bit of homework, maybe you studied. Maybe studies kind of maybe not too much, and
Maybe.
you can show up and still get A's and still do really well. Um, so in the sense that it helped me for college, only I say yes with an asterisk because I was able to take several health related classes in high school, like
Oh,
medical terminology.
that's
And
huge, actually.
yeah, they talking to other people. There isn't a lot of specialized classes in that sense. That's common. Like sports medicine was an example, or emergency med. So I got to have a little bit of an exposure to the medical world, and that's what got me to start my pre med track, my one of many tracks that I started with. So it helped in that regard. But as far as like handling college or having that mentality, not so much. Even though I did take I believe it was Calc 1 that was meant to be like college credit, and it did turn out to be that way. Just the way classes are run in high school and college is very different. And it was a noticeable change once I got to that next stage.
And when it came to selecting a college or like trying to decide where you would be applying to, what were your parameters when you were doing that?
So when I was looking around, I had me and my dad mostly for like looking at schools. My mom was there for a couple, but I remember one in particular where my dad and I flew out to Oregon State, which is out in Corvallis, I believe, like not Portland, a little bit south. And it was one of those things that it just needed to have some kind of med school. I wasn't too particular on it needing anything specific because I was going into pediatric oncology, which is just a fancy term of saying kids' cancer. And so in my head, I didn't really need my undergrad to have specialized oncology or anything like that. If it just had a somewhat reputable medical school, great. So I was looking at Oregon State for a time. I was looking at the University of Utah, the University of Arizona, and I really don't remember much of why I picked in the end the University of Arizona. I remember walking it and the first time going, I hate it. Like I don't like all these bricks. I don't like the look. I don't like it. I don't know
Oh
what it
man.
was. It was just like walk on. Eh.
I had the exact opposite feeling at when I did my UA tour. I was like, "Oh man, this is it." um, I'd like to ask a question if that you can also say no to if you want, which
Okay.
is, were there any financial limitations or academic limitations that you came up against while you were looking into colleges?
Yes, as far as finances go, in at least one regard, I remember UCSD, University of California, San Diego. I remember that being one of my top contenders that I was looking at between, I think in the end, the top three were the U of U, Utah, Arizona, and San Diego. And the tuition at UCSD at the time, back in 2015 area, was like 54,000, which was about double the other two choices. And that was a campus that when we walked it, I thought was a fantastic campus with one catch. The surrounding area, ass, in my opinion. It's deep in La Jolla or San Diego, technically, and it's just city right there, like California, deep downtown city life. So like you're on a nice, beautiful campus. It's nice and calm, and then it's traffic hell right outside those grassy lawns. So I never loved that type of experience to it, but it was very pretty. The buildings were all very unique, and it just had this nice feel to it. But that 54,000, even with the FAFSA involved, I think I was able to essentially assume any college was going to cost more like 35,000, which is still a lot. But with other schools like the U of A that I didn't have to reach that maximum, I mean, almost did, but not quite. That kind of got in the way. Academic-wise, I didn't have any issues that I could see as far as doing applications or looking at like, oh, you need to have this certain GPA. I had like a 3.96 or something, and I didn't have a lot of extracurriculars academically, but I was doing a lot of music and doing theater-related things, and so I looked well-rounded. I did sports and stuff, so... And I wasn't applying to like the really big wig schools like MIT or any Ivy Leagues and such. So I was only really looking at just regular, more or less regular. Someone might be like, well, UCSD, it's so different. Like, okay, but in my head, it's regular, those types of colleges. So I didn't have any of those issues in that sense.
And you mentioned it there for a second. You did quite well in grades in high school. Did that also mean that you received financial aid or scholarships or grants from universities that made it an easier thing to narrow down beyond just what FAFSA provided?
It did, but I mean, it's been a while. It's been a decade, literally about a decade since I've done the process. And I feel like I kind of already made my choice by that time. Finances were starting to get involved, or what kind of scholarships were being offered. I know for the U of A, they were taking half off. And since I was out of state, it basically made me an in-state person. I had gotten like a 29 cumulative on my ACT is another part of it. So like well, but not like, oh my God, he's a genius. So I never got the like full ride academic scholarship situation. I don't remember what the University of Utah would have given. Probably a good deal since I would have been in-state at the time. And the high school I went to did a lot of providing state scholarships. Like you had lots of opportunities. They had like the Sterling Scholar, I think it was called. And they gave it out to, they split up into all kinds of different departments. Like they would give $1,000 or $2,000 to whoever they thought the top contender was for science in the school, for music, for theater, for math. So like there was about 12 or 15 students in just my grade. It wasn't like for the entire, like, oh, here's 3 years worth of people. There's only 15. It's every grade they do it. So that would have helped, but I didn't and still don't like the environment of Salt Lake City. So that was kind of, after I looked at I lived in Salt Lake City for a time when I was a kid. So like I remember it and went and visited a little, and I was like, I can't, like, I like the idea of the school. Later, I did go to the University of Utah. That's a later story, but it was just the smog, that nasty air, half the year. I couldn't do it. It was a no.
Yeah. So then, as you've mentioned, you did end up going to the University of Arizona. You started in physiology, not pediatric oncology. That'd be crazy to start that at 18. You started in physiology. How long did you, or when did you start to feel that physiology might not have been the right path for you? Or maybe that question's too early. Maybe the first question is, how did the first year feel to you at the University of Arizona?
Okay, those actually kind of come together because it was kind of the first year where everything was like, oh. So that first semester was kind of the wake up of like, we were hallmates. You knew I was going to bed at 9:30. I was just this cute little straight edge boy. Still had my high school habits, so like I didn't really study. I would just go to class, do the homework, show up. And I ended up with like a 2.97 GPA that first semester, which some people might be hey, that's great. It wasn't for me because my scholarship needed a 3.0.
Considering we were at a 3 point, like something way higher in high school. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure
like
that was a shock.
an entire point off. Like instead of getting A's all the time, it was B's and then a C that really took a chunk out of it.
Yeah.
So that second semester of my freshman year, I was I was stressing a bit. I was like, oh, I got to really do more. I got to get that because I can't get just a 3.0 now. I got to get like a 3.1 so I can counterbalance the other one, or else I'm going to lose my scholarship and stuff. And that second semester went a lot better, and that I got used to the climate of college, of being comfortable staying up a little bit later to maybe do a little bit more work instead of being done at like 7 o'clock and then just pissing off for 2 hours until I go to bed, or staying up to hang out with friends more, which some people might be like, wouldn't that get in the way of academics? Like, not really. Like, yes, sometimes if you always are going out for that and not ever taking time to do your schoolwork, but it just made a better all-around experience because I was living in the dorms at the time, so I'm just campus, campus, campus constantly. And if you always see it as just this grueling thing, you're never going to want to touch anything. You're like, I got to do this report or I got to do this essay. You're always going to feel like you have to do it. But if you try to make it a full-blown experience of like, oh, hey, me and Maxie are going to go out to breakfast tomorrow, that's going to be nice. Or they were talking about going to some party for a couple hours. Oh, it's already 8 o'clock. Whatever. I had made up a rule that second semester, and I still live to it, even though I'm not that old, it doesn't happen as often. But if I am given the option to stay up and do something, I'm going to take it. So like if it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and someone's like, hey, let's go do something, I'll go do it. Does that mean I'm going to stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning every single night I get the chance? No. But it means I'm going to still go out there, try it for even a little bit, have a nice time, and then go, instead of being like, well, I got work tomorrow, I got to sleep. Yeah, I'd rather be tired the next day. It's really not that big a deal.
I agree with you. I think it's very important that you take a holistic experience when it comes to higher education, because if you are just going at it from an educational perspective, this is also, should be said, is for American students because it's very different over here in Europe. If you're just going at it from I'm just here to learn, you are going to burn yourself out so fast. So incredibly fast. Speaking of burning ourselves out, you burned yourself right out of a physiology degree. At what point did you decide that you were not really interested in the degree that you were pursuing?
So that would have been, I had done that second semester freshman year, and in the vein of trying to do more to do what I needed, I took a little bit more classes than a normal person might. Like I think I did like 18 or 19 credits as opposed to like a normal 15. So I had a little bit more of a workload when I got
so nice.
I would have
What
loved
is
to
that
be
like
in the
to take
teens.
so few classes?
What do you mean your credit number doesn't start with a 2?
What do you mean you don't have to go every year into the dean's office to ask if you can get an exception to how many classes you could take?
I think I only did that like 2 or 3 times in the entire thing, but that ended up being my fault later. Like I never had to.
That was essentially a requirement of my program, was that you went in every semester to say, can I get an exception so that I can take more classes?
I have more to do, please.
Yeah.
Where was I?
So you were taking a higher than normal course load.
So once I get done with that semester, the burnout, that's the first like, oh my God, I'm glad that semester is done. Do I still want to do this sort of thing? And I wasn't quite sure. It was one of those things that I knew I didn't love physiology, but I had no alternative. So that first semester of my sophomore year, I had acquired the astronomy minor, like I started it, and I pretty much just knocked that bitch out in one semester. Like I needed 6 classes for it. I took 4, and I had already taken 1 in the freshman year. So I literally just had 1 class left. I was taking 4 astronomy classes and some religion thing, like nothing related to the major. I was like, you know what? I'll just take a semester off essentially while still, I still needed these
being
credits
academic.
and things. Yeah, still being an academic. And sat there and thought about it. And I was like, well, I think I still want pre-med. I still want medical school. I just don't know what other degree I'd want. So I'll just stick it out for now. I got to have a degree in the end. I think I remember talking to my mom one time and she goes, well, you need a degree. It kind of doesn't matter what it is sometimes. So just get something. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have to change anything. I know physiology will be fine, I think, so I'll just stick with it. So I'm doing that, and it's my junior year, and that sucked ass. That was the year, because of that break I took, and then me wanting to have an easy senior year. I think back to back, my junior year was 21 credits for the fall and spring, and I was taking an MCAT prep course, and the classes were composed of lecture and lab. So, it's spending 9 hours a week just in labs. That's not doing reports. That's just in the building, which, like, 9 hours a week's not that, but 3-hour chunks to try and fit into your schedule is extremely hard to do. And you had to do it 3 times. I hated that. And I was able to shadow
I'm
a
so
few.
annoyed with you. I do understand. We had very different situations, but I'm so annoyed with you.
Why am I complaining about nothing?
my goddamn 4 hours of rehearsal, 5 nights a week on top of my academic course load. No, I do get it, yes. Okay,
Everyone's
continue.
life sucks until you compare it to someone else's.
Yes.
So it was somewhere in my junior year is when I started doing some shadowing of some doctors. I never did go for a pediatric oncologist. I'd kind of thrown that out of my mind by then, just by doing the research and having it really dawn on me that, sick kids every day, forever. That's an emotional toll. I'm glad people do it. And I thought I could, because at the time I was like, I want to help kids, but I don't want to freaking do general medicine where they come in with a sniffly nose, I give them a cough drop, they leave. Like, things to where my family generally didn't go to medical centers at all if you had a run-of-the-mill sickness. Like, I know some people who go every single time, and that just kind of blew my mind. I was sitting there like, if it's not life-threatening, it's just a normal... You can go get tested for flu and stuff if you're worried about that. Like, if you live with your grandparents stuff, that's a different thing. But just symptom-wise, you're not doing well, but you're also not at risk. Yeah, we're not going in. So I didn't want to be that kind of doctor where you just came in for general boring stuff. I was like, you want to be sick? Great. Like, you don't want to be sick, but I'm going to take care of the real shit. And I found out I couldn't handle the real shit. So shadowed a physical therapist, shadowed a psychiatrist, shadowed a cardiovascular doctor. I forget all. Like, it was only for like a couple hours or a day's worth for any of these people. Like, it was very short. I was going, hey, can I just come shadow you sometime? I think about 5 or 6 doctors in total, and none of them gave a good impression for the career. Like, they themselves loved talking to them. They were all nice people. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like I interacted with one of them. I was like, ooh, douchebag. I don't want to be a psychologist now because you're a douchebag. It was not that at all. But the environment for these medical personnel was I don't know it now, but I don't think COVID helped it. It's no bueno. It's not great. And I valued my own psyche too much, I guess you could say. Enough to say, this isn't going to be what just enough. You don't have to say, oh, I value myself too much. No, just enough to say, I don't think that's going to be for me. So that's my junior year, and I'm like, well, just remember what mom said. You got to get a degree, and I don't have a backup. So I'm going to finish physiology. I had a nice, easy senior year, had like 14 credits. I got to be home and hang out with friends all the time. Got to play in the steel drum band. Got to play it. I was in musical groups throughout my college career, but to various enjoyments. And finished the degree with no intentions of using the damn thing. Like, I took an MCAT, or maybe it was just a practice MCAT. I took it, whatever, 8-hour long ass pain. But after that, I was like, med school is not going to be for me, but I had to figure something else out. And that's what that whole next summer, like, I graduated, and I took that whole summer to be like, well, hell, what am I going to do now? I can't just...
Before we get there,
okay, go ahead.
Before we get there, looking back now, as you say, it was not a decade away from starting school, but we're now 6 years later. or 7 years from the moment that you kind of decide, I don't know that I can doing this anymore, do you regret not making a change and just hauling through?
If I were to have done it a different way, the one thing I never loved about doing music in college, like just interacting with, I was only in like musical groups. I took a couple like gen ed classes, but never, I knew music well and fine enough in high school. Like I don't need 14 years of theory. That is going to be I'm already getting irritated just talking about it right now. I need to relax. I'm going to take a breath. And it was theory that got in my way every single time. And not necessarily just that. It's theory-minded people in music that drove my ass up that wall, this wall, the roof, all the way across it. And because in high school, it was much more of a, some might call it carefree. I just call it musical, to where you worried about the feeling and the end product. And is it musical? Not, well, what if we worry about this little fifth that's sitting over there? Does this chord resonate with blah, blah? And like breaking it down to the nitty gritty. I go into my science classes, we're breaking it down to the bare bones. And I'm like, great, that's necessary. I come over to music and people have lost the point to music. They've broken it down to the science. And I understand there's a need for it when it comes to translating the music. If I make a song and I want to make sure you can play it just about exactly as I want you to play it, theory's needed, like writing it out, blah, blah, blah. But there is so much more to the song, to the music, that has to be off the paper, that is just in your heart, in your body, playing the instrument, singing the song, that people have lost track of, at least at the U of A music department at the time. You know, everyone's gonna be like, oh my God, he just said that. Yeah, back then, didn't love it. Would I have tried to get over that? That would have probably been my change. Like if I were to have gone back and done a different degree, knowing I wasn't going to use pre-med at all. And I did enjoy science, so it's not like I hated the classes. It was all fine enough. But I would have seen if I could have handled the music theory minded people and just gotten a music degree anyway, to where it's like, well, you know, every degree sucks in a sense. There's going to be something that just hits you funny and you don't like it. But there could still be a benefit. I would have liked to have seen if I could have swallowed the pill of being around theory folk and dealing with that kind of learning, but get to be in music. Like I really enjoy it. I missed it. I miss it, I should say. I don't really play it much, being in an apartment and being self-conscious about all the noise I make. I'm loud enough as is. I don't need an instrument in my mouth to be worse. So like I don't get to play and practice and stuff as much. So long story short, I would have tried doing music. I believe it was Tulane University in Louisiana, like in New Orleans, that was always this kind of bug in my ear when I was looking at colleges. I was kind of like, that would be fun. But I kept getting blocked by this idea of, oh, it's just theory. Like, it's not music. It's not fun. It's not great. It's theory time. And I'm like, ugh. I would have probably done that. If I could go back, I would have gone to probably Tulane or music in some sense as my degree.
So you're talking about that as like a completely, if you could go back in time now and change it. Then more to what I was trying to ask was, junior year, you've given up on pursuing this physiology degree. Was there not ever an idea in your head that was perhaps maybe I try another degree, extend into a 5-year degree, and just move to something else? Was there ever a thought about that, or were you just like, I'm just gonna haul forward and finish this thing and then figure shit out later?
Mostly the haul forward thing. It was for how much money was on the line for tuition. In my head, I was like, well, if you want to do something else, you have to know you want to do something else. And I couldn't narrow anything down. I was still, music wasn't going to be an option. I didn't love any of the sciences enough to want to pursue them more. I didn't care about any humanities, business, name it. There was no for sure other thing. And it didn't have to be like 100%, but nothing that was hitting even 80% of being like, that sounds actually pretty nice. I should go do that. So I was like, well, until I have a backup, finish the degree. Like, going in my own research didn't really confirm this, but my mom's always talking in my ear about like, just get a degree. It doesn't even matter for a lot of jobs. I don't love that.
Mm-hmm.
But
we'll talk about that.
But it's going to pan out to be useful for me now, later in the story. But I never had really that moment to where I could for sure just turn off. I didn't have that scholarly sidetrack, hence the show. It was just one of those things to where, well, you're stuck on this, you're doing it, you're finishing it. Because I'd rather have a finished thing, and I still don't know what I'm doing, than to have just 3 years of college that really don't equate to anything. Like, it would have been nice to have completed another degree, but then it'd have to be science-based, or else those classes were useless anyway. So it was just too many unknowns and too many what-ifs at the time. I was like, all right, we'll finish it, clean break, and then I can figure out the next step.
That makes a lot of sense. So, you've graduated. You now have a physiology degree you do not plan on using at all. What is going through your mind that summer, say, for example?
So I was taking time to figure out what I really wanted in a career. And physiology / medicine, I should say, didn't provide, I guess, what we often term all the time, the work-life balance, as far as getting able to clock in and being able to clock out. And I'm like, you really don't really get to clock out much. Like, your day, like, there's benefits to 12-hour days and this, that, everything under the sun. But nothing seemed excitable for my entire life of being in medicine. So I was like, okay, well, what did you like in high school? Like, why did you do medicine in the first place? Well, I was really good at it. It's kind of the main thing. Did you like medicine and physiology? I liked that I was good at it. I don't know that I ever really loved it. I did enjoy like my exercise physiology classes, but they had a very hands-on modality to it. It wasn't just lecture and learning, so I think it was more just that I liked. But it was mostly I was good at it, so I think I like it. Turns out not. Well, when I was in high school, I'm not going to be a track star, and that's nothing to be in school for, even though I did that for a time. Well, there was music. I was doing music all the time. I was in jazz band. I was in marching band. I was in the classical band. I was in the pep band. If I wasn't doing, if I wasn't in the stagecraft, I was in the pit. So I was always involved in music. And I go, okay, what about music? Well, I don't want to just like play in bars or bands and hope I get famous one day. That didn't feel practical. Maybe you could say I wasn't like inspired enough. Some people go out and do it and it works for them. I had already, quote unquote, wasted 4 years in college. I didn't want to think about wasting, quote unquote, 4 years trying to make it big as a musician.
Or more.
Or more. Yeah. So during my first undergrad, I should just say my one undergrad. There's not going to be two now. Again, foreshadowing, but whatever. I ended up playing in an alternative rock band who's getting no credit right now because, yep. Enough said. And there was a guy who I had been friends with during that time who ended up going to this audio engineering school. So during the summer when I'm pondering, I'm like, well, if that guy can do it, I could do it. And that would be something that would keep me in the world of music, but in a practical way to where I'm helping with recording music, mastering music, whatever that might be. I don't know yet, but that could be a good idea. This was the fall of 2019. I looked it up, I applied, I got in, and started that schooling October of 2019.
And what was that program meant to achieve?
So it was a very general audio engineering degree. And I say it very general in the sense that they cover, I think, the 5 big avenues of audio.
Can I break in for just a second? Yeah. Was it a degree or a certificate?
Okay, that's a good point to say. It's technically a trade certificate. This is a trade school. It is 9 months in class, and then you get 3 months afterwards to get your internship hours that allows you to actually graduate. Like, there's the kind of 2 halves to that in a sense.
Okay. Excellent. So you can go back now.
Okay, thank you. It's good that you say that.
What was the school meant to cover? Yeah.
It was meant to cover, let's see if I get all 5. I'm pretty sure it was 5. There's studio music, like what you can think of as like anything you hear on Spotify or whatever, iTunes and baloney stuff. You have theater. You have post, which is like movies. There's live music. That felt weird. Yeah, like live concerts and shows. And then there's broadcast. So like sports, you name it, live. Different version of live, okay? And so you get exposure to all that. You spend the way that it works in the 9 months is you're in these 3-week cycles, they call it. And each cycle is focused on a different facet. So like the first one is going to be, how does a microphone work? What is a microphone? Very bare bones. What's a sound wave? Stuff like that. Technical, like the whole thing is hands-on technical, but don't be too worried if you're not very physics minded. I learned more about sound waves as a physical thing in my gen ed basic physics class in physiology than I ever did in audio engineering. That wasn't really the point. Like, you didn't need to know how to physically interpret sound waves in a space. It was more, can you take care of the machines that do that sort of thing? So this goes on until March of 2020, which was, a special time in everyone's lives. I remember it so well. It was that whole February. I was in Phoenix. This is where, they're fine enough people. I can say the name. The Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences, technically in Tempe, I think is where they're based out of. Tempe, Mesa, Gilbert, whatever. And during all of February, there's all these rumors going around of weird sickness, flu thing, China, what, just the whole COVID crap just starts going about. And I'm sitting there like, oh no, everyone acts like there's this huge epicenter in Phoenix. Like, everyone just keeps like pointing that way, pointing downtown. And I go, that's not really how this is working, but okay. So that's all going down. In March, I remember I was in a class that what they do for this degree also is they give lots of opportunities for you to get certified in different software and such. So you can add that to your resume and go, hey, I can use Auto-Tune. I can use Melodyne. I can use Soundscape, whatever. So instead of just going, well, I did learn these things, you can tell your employer or future employer, yeah, for sure, definitely use it right here. So I'm in one of these classes. Don't even remember what one I was doing. I pretty much did almost every single certification because I was like, well, I don't know what I want, but this all looks good for me, so I'll do it. I'm in the class for like 4 hours, get done, and my girlfriend at the time and I go back to my place. We get some fast food Mexican food. We're sharing like this big chimichanga and some, I think, like nacho fries kind of situation. Sitting on the couch, whatever, hanging out, eating. And we look at our phones, and we get an email that says, hey, administration has decided with all this stuff going on with the COVID-19 coronavirus that we're going to close for 2 weeks. And we look at it, we're like, shit, all right, 2-week vacation. Like anybody else. Like anybody else was all excited for. So we're like, what are you going to do? Oh, fuck, I'm going home. I ain't staying here in my studio apartment in Phoenix. Like, I don't have any reason to stay here. School's gone. Like, we can't even do the after hours stuff. Like, it was closed. So I pack up my stuff, go back to St. George, end up being 2 weeks turns into 3 months. We come back to school. They do the whole hybrid thing where it's half of it's online, half of it's in person with masks, la la la. And what the hell's the point of me going on this long rant? What am I doing? I've lost the point. And so navigating through that whole mess, eventually get done with the schooling part in October. That was supposed to be 9 months, but the delay ended up being 12. And what my class, my cycle, had 12 people. I think they generally do 12 people at a time. 2 of us graduated because we lost half to COVID. We lost 2 or 3 to delays with COVID. Like half of them just up and left. Like they couldn't make the money work because the timing was shit. And this is where I put an asterisk by their good people, and that's why I hesitated to say their name. The way that they did the tuition thing is if you made it to like a little over halfway, something like that, it was non-refundable. And my cycle was perfectly timed to where we finished that point before COVID happened. So when people wanted to, get a refund because of unprecedented epidemic problems, the school turned around and said, no, fuck you, sorry. They didn't say fuck you, but the tone comes out that way very much of, yes, I understand. A contract was signed. Also understand freaking COVID happened. So, lots of things are changing. I don't think anyone would have been sad if you, school, had given refunds to some of these people who physically just could not come back or the money wasn't there because of this shitty time. I don't think that many people would have been like, that's unreasonable. That would have been pretty good. That would have been pretty sick. So lost half our people to that. 2 or 3 had to delay because, they were able to come back, but they needed to take care of some loose ends first or weren't comfortable right away until they saw what the school was doing. So in the end, me and one other guy, hashtag, hey Fletro, how you doing? Only ones that graduated. And by then, again, found it was not going to be what I wanted. I liked doing music, studio music, but they have such a totem pole mentality of dirt shit, intern at the bottom, unpaid for 2 years. Then you can finally move up when you show that you can wrap a cable, that you can not fry a microphone. Dumb little stuff like, oh, your coffee's pretty good. You want to use a microphone? Yeah, I haven't gone to barista school for half a second. I spent a year touching microphones and you won't let me look at one. And I was not about that disrespectful scenario. Like, call it what you want. That's just disrespectful, that whole thing. Mm-hmm. There's 2 other facets I liked in audio. I wanted to enjoy theater, like that type of live music, but the theater music or theater audio was not taught well there. It wasn't fleshed out. The days you were doing it felt kind of pointless, that you're kind of just doing busy stuff, that you weren't really learning much. You're just kind of doing a couple things and being like, am I being gatekept from learning this for real? Or do you just not care or not know? It was very strange. I wanted to love it with my background in stagecraft. Couldn't love it the way it was presented. And then there was broadcast. Broadcast is great. Went to go see NASCAR in Phoenix. They came in, they brought in this big old caravan for the whole production. They let us come in and stay in the trailers and watch it. And where music studio stuff is, how I explained it, broadcast felt the exact opposite. You still have a hierarchy. That's how things work as far as like who responds to who. But it was very respectful. Everyone knew where their space was and allowed others to have their space. There was the overarching director, but he's just, calling the shots and knows that you're going to be able to perform to it. He's not going to micromanage you. And it was just this whole thing of like, oh, this is great. But I couldn't get behind the idea of most broadcasting scenarios. The way it works is, let's say maybe you live in a big city that has a big basketball arena and you want to always do the audio there. That's not quite how it works from what I've seen and been told. It's generally, let's say it's Phoenix. You are more likely to be an audio engineer for the Phoenix Suns than you are for the Phoenix Stadium, which means you're going to be traveling a lot. Some people think that, oh, great, get to travel a lot. Yes, but you're not really traveling.
But you're
for
working.
Travel. You're working. and when you're done working, you're traveling to the next spot. Like, it's very much up and go, up and go, up and go. So I didn't like always being away from home or having like us set home. And that's what turned me off from doing broadcast. And that was the last straw to where I was like, God damn it. Version 2 of getting through, shadowing the experiences, finding it's not what I want, and getting another certificate, degree, whatever word you want for that general term. And I'm not going to be using this.
All right. So at what point had you, in that process, decided that was also not going to happen for you?
It was after doing kind of like those 3 check marks. Like, at first I went in for music, And after very quickly finding that environment was not good, like you get to do some practice sessions, like actual musicians come in and you get to do a recording session. And the way the professors act during those moments gives you an enlightening moment on how it's going to be in reality. At least the way that they present it to you, you know, there's always going to be grains of salt. There's always going to be other studios that are different. But when that's the only information you know, you can't help but only work with that. So I was like, okay, maybe not music. That's okay. I've been doing well in this school and I've enjoyed the process. It's very hands-on. A lot of this, it's not just lecture and spit it out regurgitation. It's a lot easier than college. I remember doing tours for people for open houses and they'd be like, so my son is thinking about going to college and stuff and he's worried that this trade school is going to be harder. I go, it is not in just about any facet. The only difference, the only caveat I should say, is if you have issues with confidence. If you can't comfortably, like not even like, you don't have to be level 10 confidence, like level 5, just like you can exist in your own body, in your own space, and not be trembling hands, then you are going to be breezing through trade school just fine. But if you have social anxieties, or if you're not comfortable with yourself and existing, just doing your thing, or anything in that kind of vein, that's when trade school can be hard. But the material itself, in my opinion, has always been easier. And part of that is the modality that it's taught, since it's taught with such a hands-on practice mentality instead of just blah, 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 oh, blah, blah, blah. It helps a lot. So anyway, back to the main point. Music, throwaway. Theater, wanted to enjoy, but I could never get my feet in it. We didn't have any practice sessions with the theater. There was no plays that came in. We just used the same space that we used for like concert type venues to be in that scenario, but never really got to try it and was not inspired by the professor. So threw that out. Did the broadcast stuff, and the broadcast was like the last material that you learn in the degree. So like you have to really know a lot of the stuff before you can do broadcast, just with how everything's interconnected and stuff, and it's a live venue, all kinds of stacking issues. So get to that, and I was all excited, like, all right, here's the final taste. We're going to do it, and broadcast should be it. And then thought about it enough and went, I can't get over that work thing of traveling all the time. I want to be able to live somewhere. I mean, later I'd find that I'd be moving a shit ton anyway, but that was more or less my choice. It wasn't because I was doing it for work. And so it was kind of just like kept knocking, like I started off with big hope, then COVID happened, and that's about when I learned about music. So I went down to 2/3 hope, and then theater never caught on, so that dissolved to 1/3 hope. And then by the time I was done with the degree and I was doing my internship hours at a small theater in outskirts of St. George, Utah, I was like, nope, this is also coming back to a problem with the work-life balance thing. It's just, God damn it.
So we are searching for some sort of work-life balance is really where we're at this point. What do you do to try and find that for yourself?
So I guess the first thing to say for it is, what do I call work-life balance? Because that term gets thrown around a lot, and I think some people who might be who feel as though there's two different types of workers. There's those who are willing to work hard and those who care about work-life balance. And that is not a healthy mindset. That's not what we're saying.
No.
I'm not saying I am not saying I want to go to work and do nothing and get paid for it. Would that be nice? Sure. Am I expecting that? Not even a little bit. It'd be kind of boring too. What I'm saying is I'd like to be able to do the work, whatever the hours are, if it's 30, 40, 50, somewhere around there. More than 50? I don't think that's good. But to be able to clock out and put that away to where I don't have to take that home, whether it's emotionally, like the pediatric oncology would, whether it's I can't be home because I'm in a hotel traveling like audio was. I'd want to be able to be done with work so I can be with family, be with friends, do the 14 hobbies that I have of cooking and gardening and painting and drinking and whatever else. I want to be able to do those things. Like, I want to have a life, not be a worker. So I want to make sure that's stated for anyone who's like, well, he just doesn't want to do anything. I'd like to do something, I tell you. So when looking around for work-life balance going forward, what gets me to then go on to my next avenue of education is I was working at the Denver Botanic Gardens. Great place. Cool spot. If you're ever in Denver and need somewhere to go, I recommend. Even in the winter, when it was totally snowing, which is not a great time to visit an outdoor green space, but it was still cool. And I was working there for 6-ish months. And I'm sitting at the information desk. I spent half my time being at the information desk helping people with what's going on today? How do I find this? La la la. And I'm like, damn it, Bryce. You're freaking 25, working a random ass job, and you're going nowhere. In the sense that I have no aspirations of owning the gardens, of managing the gardens, of doing anything with physiology, doing anything with audio. I wasn't doing anything. I had started streaming, video game streaming, and was kind of having that be something I'd hope would get big one day. I started writing my book that I'm currently still working on. I'm in the last phase, thank God, 4 years later. 3 years later. And so I was just in this weird spot of like, I'm working, but there is no future. I have nothing figured out. And so while I was working at the information desk, I'm pondering, and I go back to my life and I go, so what did I enjoy? Have I had any jobs that was similar to what I'd like to do full time? And in my undergrad, physiology, remember I had my astronomy minor. Accompanying that, I worked at the planetarium for about 3 years. And that was great. We'll just guess it's great. I'm not going to open that. It was great. When I was doing the job itself, it was great. That's all I'm going to say. And I got to just be there, talk to people, teach them stuff about science. It didn't have to be anything advanced. I always make the joke of I would literally tell people the big yellow one's the sun, and I love that shit. That was great. So I was like, what if I just do that again? What if I go back to the planetarium for like, have that be for real? Like I could see myself going in, doing that, maybe one day being in charge of it, running the shows all the time and stuff. There was only one planetarium in Denver when I was living there at the time, and it was also attached to a college, so they all hired students and stuff. And the more I looked into all kinds of planetariums across the country, the money wasn't there for the performers, as we'll call them, the operators, the ones who do the show. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be the people facing, doing the shit. And unless your name is Neil, you're probably not going to be any big of an operator. Like, now, people aren't going to come see you for you necessarily. You're just going to get paid, the $15 an hour to run the show, because that's just how it goes. And the people who manage and run the business side of the planetarium are going to make the decent money. And I'm not business orientated, minded, inspired, anything like that. So I was like, damn. What about something else that's teaching science? I go, okay, what if I teach science? Duh, let's go with the real easy thing, like real broad, teach science. Okay, what kind of teaching? Well, I don't think I want to do K through 12. As much as I like talking about the basic stuff, I like the environment of college in the sense that we're all grown-ups. There's a lot less politics. Well, not really. Different politics. Classroom politics, I should say. And the dynamic's not as weird because you don't have to worry about an adult with minors and like the school system with their standardized testing. Whatever you want to open the bag of. Didn't want K through 12, so I wanted college. So, okay, be a professor. So I was like, oh, yay! I figured out what I want to do. So I start looking around, and I remembered that the U of A, Arizona, has a pretty reputable astronomy department. Life events made it to where I moved from Denver to Salt Lake City and kind of pushed that away for a minute. I was not in a happy time and didn't even think about my future at all. I was just trying to recover from what I had done, what had happened, blah, blah, blah. So I'm in Salt Lake City. and I'm working a random job. I was working at the U of U hospital as a valet for the hospital. Did that for a month. Stopped it for a while because they did not express the environment again, how hazardous it was. Like, we were out in the snow on a hill, and multiple of my coworkers had been hit by cars, and I said, no, not even happening. For $16 whatever an hour, no, I'm not getting tapped by a car. Fuck that. So left that job after a month, ended up working at IKEA. Then I finally was able to wake up and be like, okay, let's do something about our schooling and shit, because I'm at IKEA. Nothing wrong with IKEA. It's not what I want, though. I don't want retail. And so I look at the University of Utah. They don't have an astronomy degree, but they do have physics. And I was like, that's not a degree I want, but I can start there because I know I need to catch up a little bit. I needed a different physics class because I did algebra based. Now I need calculus, and I just need some more catch up. So it'll be fine. I'll start there. While I'm at the University of Utah, which, to come back to how I said before of like, oh, I hated the U because of the Salt Lake City and blah, I still stand by that. The University of Utah, great school. I've actually enjoyed many of my professors there, even if I was only there for a summer class and then a semester. Loved the campus, like the way it's laid out. I think it's a very pretty campus. All that said and done, Salt Lake City, ugh. The air for the winter, which is when you're in school, there were several times I had to not go to class because I would get smog lung, essentially. You'd wake up with like this nasty cold-like allergies thing, and you just can't function for the day. You're just like sick. But it goes away after the next day. It's weird, hated it, blah, blah, blah. So I look around, I look back at the University of Arizona, and I notice this group called the Center for Astronomy Education. Their website was kind of garbage. It was hard to figure out who did what. But I did find the contact information for the director of it, a Mr. Ed Prather, who gets a shout out because he is he has a large role in what happens to me from this point forward. And still does. I still talk to him. So I get to talking to him and I go, this sounds perfect. Astronomy and teaching. This is what I want. He convinces me to come back to the U of A. So I go back down to University of Arizona, January of 23, like literally New Year's Day. Yay! Drive down. And get there. Well, I want to make sure. Any interjections before I keep going? Before I start talking about this other thing? Okay. For any of you listening, we'll find it to be a cute little treat because later on I give my sister some shit for how long that episode is, and we are going to beat that probably. So I guess yapping runs in the family.
So, you go back to the University of Arizona after 3 years, right?
Yep. It was, yep. Ended in 19 and got back in 23. So yeah, 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm. All
Came
right.
back.
Let's go from there.
Let's go from there. So I come back with, in my head, I'm going to be an astronomy professor. I'm doing the classes, relatively rudimentary at first. And when I say that, it's like calculus 3, physics 2, astronomy 250, stuff like that. And the entire time during this education of mine, the second undergrad, I keep checking tabs with Dr. Prather, the professor guy who ends up being my mentor. Because I've had 2 other degrees, essentially, 2 other scenarios, 2 other work career paths that failed because I didn't take enough time to think about why I didn't like it or to find out what it was really like. Like, that was part of it too. Like, for audio, I didn't know what it was like. Medicine too, but whatever. So I kept checking in and being like, okay, I want to be a professor. What's it like to get there? Okay, what's it like to get there? What's it like to keep airing it out? Because you're going to say things one time and you forgot to say something a second time. And then there's more things to say. There's always more there. Okay, great. Now that I've graduated with my PhD in this scenario, what's it like then? Oh, okay, well, I don't really want to do research. What's the story for me? Oh, well, you're going to have to kind of do some anyway. Or depending on where you get hired, that's half your situation. And that, okay, what really, in the end, we're going to fast forward a little bit since we don't want every story to be forever. I'm not going to be an astronomy professor. And what it came down to is not every college has professors that are there for the sake of teaching. A lot of the time, unfortunately, the reason why so many people definitely have had a professor that sucks so bad is because teaching, more often than not, is a side effect for professors. They are more often than not, depending on the college. This can be very different for liberal arts colleges or community colleges. I'm only speaking on like R1, run-of-the-mill big boys like the University of Arizona, University of Utah, whatever. Professors are brought on because they do the research that brings in the money.
That's not a category I knew existed.
Yeah, R1, it's got to do with, for not knowing too much of the specifics, but basically it's like a ranking for the types, the level of research that college provides, whether it's how much funding they get or what they can do. That's the big boy.
Okay, great. I'll let you go back.
Oh, that's really good. That's a great clarification. So professors don't normally get hired on for their teaching prowess. In fact, to be a professor, I'll ask you for fun. How many classes, how many credits does a professor need to have in education in order to then start teaching in a college?
None.
Exactly 0. There is no training for people to teach in college. So that's why sometimes you got fantastic people, even though they didn't take anything in education. And then more often than not, you have a lot of people who aren't great. Part of it's a passion problem because they feel like they have to do the teaching. They don't want to. And others, it's because they just don't know any better. It's not their fault. They haven't been taught how to teach. And it's not just to know a topic that will give you the edge in teaching. Do you know a topic well if you can teach it? Yes. But there's still a different, teaching is its own thing to learn. It's its own type of monster you got to tackle. So with that said, since most professors are brought on for the sake of their research, you generally have to do research. And I didn't want to do that. I was like, I'm already going to be doing a lot of science and research to get through to having a PhD. I'd like to just start teaching and doing the part I like after that point, because this is going to be 8 years plus, because it was going to be about 2.5 to do the second undergrad, and on average 6 years for the PhD. You might have to do a postdoc, which is like 2 years on top of that for each one plus. So I'm like, here's another decade of my life, and then I still don't get to teach all the time. There are professors of practice, is generally a term that gets thrown around for those who are brought on for their teaching, but that wasn't common enough for me to feel comfortable. A lot of professors were to do research, and I could have done it to where it was like science education based. I didn't have to explicitly be working on a telescope or astronomy data. It didn't have to be like that. But there's too many little things like how much time this is going to take, how it's unclear how many postdocs I have to have. Like that was always annoying at the University of Utah. I liked the class. You had to take this little seminar class where you interacted with all kinds of physics and astronomy personnel, people actually out in the field. And they had so many postdocs between them all. Like every single one did their PhD and then 2 or 3 postdocs, which is two years minimum times 3 is another 6 years at minimum. They're taking 20 years of school before they start to be in college for academia teaching and such. And I was sitting there. I remember this vividly, going back slightly, but I raised my hand during the seminar. And I could not help myself. There was like 9 of these people, all of them in the same scenario of what I just explained. And I go, I point out, you guys have been in school for 20 years before you become a professor. And I don't remember my exact phrasing besides, and that sounds ridiculous. Like, how does that make any sense? That is a huge...
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Bryce.
Not always the most silver-tongued in scenarios like that. But basically pointed out how dumb that was. And none of them you could see it on their face. They were instantly like, well, fuck you too, basically, of like, this is my life. This is what you do. And what always keeps getting in the way for me was I liked telling people the big yellow one is the sun. I do not want the deep theoretical hoopla, because while that is entertaining and that is fun to really get into the deep science side, I like the ability to talk to more people. I'd like to inspire the general masses as opposed to keep people who already like the topic fed in that sense. I don't need to keep spinning that wheel. So I didn't want to do all this schooling, do all this crap to talk about the sun being yellow, which is actually green, which is actually white. That's a different conversation. I've pissed off 4 people saying that just now. That's a fun conversation. I like that one. So it gets to be this last fall at the time of this podcast. It'd be fall of 2024. I'm doing the classes and I get done talking to Dr. Prather, and something about it finally sinks in of being like, son of a bitch, it's the 3rd time now. I'm not doing this career. It's not going to be worth it in my head. I get done with that conversation and I am just like, I'm not pissed. I am sad. I'm depressed. I am just like, oh my God, this keeps happening. I cannot fucking keep doing this. Of starting an education, having a career in my head, and then it doesn't pan out. How do I have this luck? How do I have this bad work ethic of not finding out myself? Whatever you want to call it. It's a combination probably. And so I get done talking to him. Luckily, just by coincidence, I had made 2 appointments, one with my academic advisor a couple days later, and then one with the College of Science career advising, essentially, a few days after that. So I go to my academic advisor and I spill my guts out like, oh my God, dude, I'm just like, fuck, I'm fucked. Like, I'm not doing what I want anymore. Like, this isn't going to be for me. I'm back to square one again. And we talked for a minute about that. Not really. We didn't like find me a new avenue. But something about being in that spot, being across the table from him, just like a little epiphany of like, wait a second. You get to just talk to people all day. Yeah, for the most part, like I have some back end stuff, but majority of my time is doing like these little meetings and stuff. I go, okay. And here we are for academic for astronomy. So it's still science based, even though you're not doing the science. You don't do any research and stuff, right? No. When you clock out, you're done, right? Yeah. I'm like, shit, we might have the thing here. I'm gonna put a pin on that. I'm thinking about that. I want to sleep on it because how many times have I gotten excited by something and it doesn't work? So a few days go by. I go to the College of Science career advisor and I go, hey, I'm not going to be a professor now. I need some other ideas. I don't know. Like I've tried the planetarium. I explained my long ass story much more efficiently than I am today. She didn't need to know the whole details. But you guys get to. Sorry. So she ends up telling me all like 17 different careers. Like she was fantastic. I went in thinking it was just going to be like a piss party. I was going to show up, say my hoopla. She might have a couple ideas here and there, but it was going to be very much like off the top of the head. No, she had shit prepared. She did fantastic. Rachel Green, College of Science, University of Arizona, big old stamp of approval. Anyone at the U of A that's in the College of Science, see her. She does great. And the best part, this will sound a little strange for some people.
And she's what again?
She is, without knowing technically her title, but a College of Science career advisor. So anyone who's in the College of Science, who's not sure about what kind of careers they can do with their degree, whether it's physiology, chemistry, biology, even psychology is now in College of Science, I believe. Anything in that vein, you can go to them. They help with resumes, cover letters, ideas for what kind of careers, anything job related. Them. And the best part of our meeting was that I hated or disliked every single suggestion she had. And some people might be like, why would that be a good thing? Because, again, I'm going to say something people don't like. I do it all the time. I have been blessed / cursed with the fortune of opportunities, and that there's been too damn many for me. In the sense that I have the burden of choice. I don't like to say it that way because so many people don't have that. I get it. every life sucks. Everyone's life sucks in some way. I don't have the no choice, so I have to complain about choice. That's what people do. It's a weird, I should have asked my sister if she knows anything about that kind of psychology of why we always have to complain. But I've always had a lot of choices, and it's hard to narrow it down sometimes. And so it was so refreshing to be like, nope, 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 and still have one thing left: academic advising. So I leave that thing and I go, I know I didn't like anything you said. I didn't tell her outright. I was kind of just like, okay, yeah. So what about this? At no point was I like, well, these are all terrible ideas for me. I know what I want to do now. It wasn't like that at all. It was more, okay, I'm going to air it out. I want to think about it. Took the day, a couple days to think about it. And I go, nope. Whether it was too much of a niche spot, like it was working at a telescope and being like outreach, and for some reason just not liking that much, or a lot of the options were like K through 12 orientated, and I'm like, I don't want to go back to that world. So academic advising sounds pretty all right. And the more I thought about it, I go, holy shit, if I could use the 14 freaking sidetracks I've used to help other people not do the same or feel as though they're not weirdos because they also did it, that would just be a funny, serendipitous scenario. And that's what's kind of gotten me to be full send academic advising. It does also help that you only need a bachelor's degree to do it. Depending on the school, you have to be specific. Most of the time, not. If it's a bigger school, my physiology degree opens me up to advising across the entire campus. It's only smaller colleges that care of like, if you want to do engineering, you need to be an engineering degree, but whatever. So my deal now is I finished this last semester. I decided I'm going to do academic advising. I already have a degree, so I cut off the astronomy program. I'm not in those classes. I'm not going to be in those classes. I'm not going to finish it, which thank God was that hard. The astronomy degree has a high bar of excellence, if you want to put it that way. Way harder than anything I did in physiology. Like the 400 level, the 408, like 485, I think it was, physiology, cardiovascular, taught at the med school. I had to walk over to the med school and get taught by personnel there. That was the hardest class probably I'd ever taken in my degree. And that was still easier than the 200 level physics classes I was taking. Duh. There's a conversation to be had there. I'm not having it right now. Too many conversations all the time. But so I get to avoid doing the hard stuff. I get to just use my degree already. I get to start work. That's the part I'm all excited about, because I've been in school for a long time, and yes, I've had jobs, but I've never been in a career. I've never been doing like 40 hours a week, just work, full-time gig. So I've been in the process of trying to find an academic advising position. At the time of this podcast, I've put applications out to mostly Western schools like Vegas, Phoenix, Tucson, Denver, such like that. I am in the works to be at the University of Arizona. If the intro to this podcast says I am, great. If not, I'm hoping for a different school somewhere else then. That will take me. But yeah, that's now the gig of doing academic advising, and in that vein of also still being a creative person. I still enjoy doing music. I still enjoy painting. I still garden, whatever. I wanted to make this podcast to two bird, one stone sort of thing, to where I get to do more academic advising, perhaps in a way that's more enjoyable to me, where it's more about conversations and it's on my terms as far as we get to just show up, my guests get to tell their story, and you get to take what you want from it. You as the viewer get to walk away with whatever you want. And I get to make something. I get to have this creative outlet. So I'm like, oh, let's do another thing. And plus it might help with my applications of like, so how have you been doing anything academic related? I'm like, well, I'm making a podcast. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called, I think, Scholarly Sidetracks. I'm hoping for that name, but once you start looking around, find it otherwise exists. So if this isn't cut out, if you're still hearing this part, yay, the name stuck. And And I think that leads me up to now, to today. I think that's the story. I think that's everything.
You did it in 100, yeah. In 1 hour and 15 minutes, you got through the whole.
It's funny to have it all splayed out now, because there's always been like this nagging thing, like whenever you're out and about and, you know, people try and do small talk and you randomly pick up on something, or they're like, oh, you went to the University of Arizona? And I have like this full like cage happen in my head where I'm like, don't spill all your guts, because God, you want to. Because like I can't tell a story halfway if I can, because I forget stuff all the time. So if I can say it all, I'm going to. And now I can have this in my head like, dude, you're going to take an hour and a half of their time to tell a story. Shut up.
Mm-hmm. Now you know the whole kit and caboodle of it all.
And for those listening, now you understand hopefully a little bit better of how I might be a somewhat useful host to this show. Of if this is going to be about sidetracks in some way, who better than one of the kings of sidetracking all the time? Of there's going to be lots of thoughts you have in your head as far as plans for the future, how a career will go, and how you think it's going to go down. And the point of this podcast is to make you not feel so jaded when that goes awry. It is almost guaranteed that your career is going to change. How your education goes is going to be different than what you would have wanted or expected. Or you just feel like you're not a standard student. Maybe you don't go to college. Maybe you're in trade school. Maybe you're doing it all at a much older age. Maybe you did military, whatever. It doesn't make any of you weirdos. Makes you weirdos. You're weird in a different way. But
it doesn't make any of you weirdos. You are, but
different conversation. But it doesn't make you any lesser of a person, is the real thing. We're all just figuring shit out every single day. You're going to mess it up. You're going to mess it up again. You're going to figure it out. And that whole track doesn't define much of anything. It defines how long of a story on a podcast it'll be, but not much else beyond that. So, whew, I'm tired.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
Are there any questions for you? I mean, you know the story really anyway, but just in me retelling it, does anything catch out and be like, hey, you forgot this thing or something?
No, honestly, I don't think there are any questions, any more questions for me beyond what I've already asked. Yeah,
good.
I think that's
and
it.
that covers too, because in these other episodes, you're gonna find that I ask two things of every guest: is they get a redo of whatever size, what would they do? Which I covered earlier with the whole music degree would probably would have been my bag. Would I have not been an academic advisor in the end? Yes, everything changes. Blah. I don't care about that. I'd be fine with life changing. I think that's an exciting thing if I could see, just because I'm on it, I can't help it. If there is an afterlife, best case scenario, in my opinion, is I get to relive my life and change one thing and see how it plays out. And then when I die, I come back and I go, oh, that was fun. I can't believe I did that. Okay, let's try this thing now. And just do it forever and ever. Like if I get to have heaven, if you will, and I get to have a choice, that's what it is. I get to see what these different outcomes would have been. That's besides the point. So I covered that, and I generally ask my guest if there was something they wish they could have said to the people, whether a certain question about their career they wish they asked, or if they want to be inspiring to the masses. Here's your chance. And at this point, I've either inspired you, pissed you off with a couple of things I said, or you're already gone. So I think I've covered anything that a person could say.
Yeah, I think that's just about accurate. I think you definitely covered that wide swath.
You did great. Thanks for being my guest and helping me make this a conversation.
In my opinion, just sitting there trying to throw it out there.
Yeah, I'm not theatrically trained like some people on this call. Dialogue is easier than monologue.
No, absolutely. It's very funny. The University of Arizona does something very different from most universities, which is that they teach when they teach theater, they start with dialogue instead of monologue. A lot of training institutions start with monologue, and I'm like, disagree. Like, we did a whole 6 months of dialogue before we ever looked at a monologue.
I feel like that'd be a much more natural transition because people aren't. I mean, you have little conversations with yourself, but you aren't monologuing, so you are already dialoguing. So it'd be an easier transition.
Yeah.
With the U of A way.